When people ask why the 2000 Baltimore Ravens won the Super Bowl, the number one answer is always going to be their defense. Holy cow, their defense. When your defense is so good that you're forcing a 3-and-out on half of your drives, you're doing something right. You name an offensive stat, and this team right here probably led in it. They allow the fewest rushing yards in the league, allowing just 970 yards all season on 2.7 yards per carry for an average of 60 rushing yards per game. The average team was allowing double that, and the next closest team, the New York Giants, allowed over 72 yards per game on the ground. So the Ravens were in a league of their own. The Ravens were the only team to allow less than 3 yards per carry. The Ravens forced more turnovers than any team in football. The average team forced 30 turnovers all season, or less than 2 per game. The Ravens forced 49, which comes out to more than 3 per game. Roughly once every quarter, the Ravens defense would come up with the ball. That's how dominant they were. And of course, the Ravens allow the fewest points of any team in football, allowing just 165 points all year, or 10.3 points per game. At a time when the game was really starting to shift in favor of the offense, seeing as this was the era of the greatest show on turf, the Ravens were showing the importance of defense. Baltimore shut out 4 separate opponents in the regular season, and only 3 times did they allow 20 or more points per game. You had a better chance of scoring 0 than you had scoring 20, at a time when the league-wide average was roughly 21 points per game. And the Ravens defense, over the course of the entire postseason, allowed just 1 touchdown, which came to the Tennessee Titans in the divisional round. Another touchdown happened on special teams at Super Bowl 35. Excluding kickoff return touchdowns, Baltimore allowed an astonishingly low 13 points across their 4 games. Seeing as the Ravens had 2 pick sixes across the 4 playoff games, if you were on offense, you were legitimately more likely to allow the Ravens to score than you were to score yourself. The Ravens defense legitimately outscored opposing offenses in the playoffs. That's how dominant they were. The conversation with how good the 2000 Ravens were starts and ends with the play of their defense, which might be the greatest defense of all time. You know who did not help the Ravens win the Super Bowl that year and be good? That was this man right here, Trent Dilfer. If the Ravens even had an average quarterback during the 2000 season, they'd probably go undefeated, and they'd be remembered today as the greatest team of all time. You could probably put me under center for that team, and I would have a Super Bowl ring. That's how good their defense was, and how bad Trent Dilfer was. Dilfer was so bad that the Ravens decided to part ways with him after the 2000 season, which you never see any team do. I don't think we're ever going to see a team willingly part ways with their Super Bowl winning quarterback right after winning the Super Bowl again. There was a stretch where, from September 25th to November 4th, the Ravens played 5 games and did not score a single touchdown. At the start of that stretch, MLB was still in the regular season, and we had 0 presidential debates. By the time the drought came to an end, the New York Yankees won the World Series, and we were 48 hours away from deciding the next president of the United States. Trent Dilfer had a touchdown-to-interception ratio hovering around 1-to-1, and had 4 separate games where he completed less than 50% of his passes, including a playoff game where he went 5 for 16 and completed 31% of his passes, which somehow the Ravens won because their defense was just that good and could carry anyone, including a bag of wet farts, to the Super Bowl. Dilfer had his moments, but those moments were few and far between. And for him to say that he played well is like the kid in the group project who says that he did a good job on the assignment, when not only did he literally do nothing, but the one thing he did do, he messed up so badly that every other team member had to edit the Google Doc overnight before the paper was due just to cover up for him. So I want you to imagine that after one of these disastrous games where Trent Dilfer somehow gets the win because the defense does all the work and he plays like hot garbage, that Dilfer takes credit for it and says that he played well and had a good outing. Imagine how delusional and stupid you have to be in order to do that. Well, during week 16 of the 2000 season, that's exactly what happened, when Trent Dilfer decided to open his mouth after a game against the Arizona Cardinals and say the dumbest possible thing that a quarter century later seriously needs to be seen to be believed. Because this is the story behind Trent Dilfer, who might not just be the worst quarterback to ever win a Super Bowl, but also the most delusional quarterback to do it too. Make sure you hit that like button down below, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss a single video that we post on the channel, because we post every single day on here about the weird and the wacky history of the NFL with stories like this one that you may not have heard of before. So if you like that sort of stuff, then this is definitely the place for you. Thanks in advance for liking and subscribing and for helping us grow this community. And with that in mind, let's talk about the time when Trent Dilfer had the intelligence of a dill pickle. Before I talk about the actual incident in question and just how insane Trent Dilfer's comments actually were, we need some context to understand the importance of this game, as well as how the game itself actually went. It's December 17th, 2000. It's week 16 of the NFL season, and as we're in the penultimate week of the year, we traveled down to the desert for this inter-conference battle of the birds, with the Arizona Cardinals hosting the Baltimore Ravens in front of a sold-out crowded Sun Devil Stadium, where 37,000 fans dressed like fans and the other 40,000 dressed like bleacher seats in a coordinated holiday costume party. This game meant nothing but pride for the Cardinals. The 2000 season had been an abysmal campaign for them in just about every way possible, as the team was 3-11, had fired head coach Vince Tobin and replaced him with Dave McGinnis, had the worst record in the NFC alongside the Atlanta Falcons, had the second worst offense in the conference, only better than the Chicago Bears, had the second worst defense in the conference, only better than the St. Louis Rams, and had the second worst point differential in the NFL at -210, only better than the Cleveland Browns. In other words, the Cardinals were a really bad football team, and it's not hard to see why no one showed up to this game. The Ravens, however, were not a bad football team. In fact, they were quite good, and they enter this game at 10-4 with the best defense in football and the best point differential in football. Baltimore locked up a playoff spot the previous week with a convincing win against the San Diego Chargers, but there was still work to be done. The Ravens, despite their 10-4 record, were second in the AFC Central, one game back of the Tennessee Titans for not just the division lead, but for home field in the entire conference. This was a critical game for the Ravens, because if they could take care of business, they'd position themselves nicely to potentially get a bye, or at the very least, be the top wild card and host the wild card round. Many people had Baltimore winning this game, with the Ravens being 15-point favorites on the road, and I think everyone was expecting another dominant performance by the historically great Ravens defense, especially against a really bad Arizona team that couldn't generate offense that season if their life depended on it. Now, I should note that this game, despite the high spread and lofty expectations for the Ravens, was not comfortable by any means. It was a game between the team with the best point differential and the team with the second worst point differential. But despite all that, the Cardinals hung in there and were only 12 yards away with 2 minutes left in the contest from taking the lead and pulling off the upset of the season. However, when all was said and done, the Ravens prevailed, taking it by a final score of 13-7, as their defense, once again, played lights out. The Cardinals got into the red zone twice in the fourth quarter and 3 times over the course of the game. All 3 times, they came up empty-handed. Of the 13 drives that the Cardinals had on the day, 6 of them either resulted in a turnover or resulted in a 3-and-out. Arizona turned it over 4 times, and their ground game, led by rookie first-round pick Thomas Jones and Michael Pittman, got nothing going, as the team combined for 51 yards rushing on 23 carries, coming out to just 2.2 yards per carry. Jake Plummer threw 2 interceptions, with one getting picked off by Jamie Sharper and the other one getting picked up by Dwayne Starks. The Cardinals went 0 for 2 on 4th down, and outside of their opening drive of the third quarter, nothing went right offensively for Arizona on this day. They were completely stifled. Baltimore's defense, for what felt like the millionth time this season, did its job and helped the Ravens get the win and get one step closer to a potential division title. And after the game, the starting quarterback of the victory, this man right here, Trent Dilfer, spoke to the press. And in speaking of the win, Dilfer said, "Obviously, I will take a great amount of responsibility for this. But there is something to be said for not panicking and playing smart." And to be fair, that is true. When you have a defense like the Ravens had in 2000, you don't need to be a world beater. You don't have to take a ton of chances, put up crazy offensive numbers, or do anything outside the box. You just have to play smart and play efficiently. Convert the third downs that you're supposed to. Hit the easy passes. Stay ahead of schedule. Don't turn the ball over and lose yardage. And do all of that, and you did your job as the signal caller for the Ravens. It reminds me a lot of Blake Bortles and the 2017 Jaguars. The games where he wasn't making mistakes and turning it over, AFC Championship excluded, because Bortles actually played quite well in that game, the Jaguars usually won, because that's all you had to do. So Trent Dilfer said to the press that yes, we only put up 13 points offensively, but I played well. I didn't panic. I played smart. I did what I had to do in order to win the game and help this team out. I played well. So, yeah. About Dilfer's performance this game. There is something to be said for not panicking and playing smart. I'd agree with that statement if it wasn't for the fact that, oh yeah, I have eyeballs! I have freaking eyeballs! Was Dilfer watching a different game? Did he know what was going on? Because let's look at how Trent Dilfer, Mr. I played well and didn't panic and played smart, actually played. Dilfer finished the game going 12 for 22, completing just 54% of his passes for 70 yards. He got sacked 4 times for 33 yards. This means that if you look at it from a net passing yardage standpoint, Trent Dilfer had a whopping 37 yards of offense on the day. He dropped back to pass 26 times and got 37 yards, which comes out to an average of 1.4 yards per pass. I don't think I need to tell you that this is really freaking bad. For some perspective, the average team in 2000 averaged 5.4 net yards per pass. Matt Jones was atrocious for the Jaguars in 2024, and he was averaging over 6 net yards per pass. The Jaguar fan in me shudders at the thought of a quarterback who was literally 4 times worse from a net yardage standpoint. And just to add some fuel onto that fire from the 2000 season, Kerry Collins at Super Bowl 35, who looked outright atrocious and maybe put up the worst performance by any quarterback in the history of the Super Bowl, he averaged 2 net yards per pass attempt against the 2000 Ravens. Kerry Collins had significantly more net yards per pass attempt than Trent Dilfer had on this day. And Kerry Collins' performance still lives on in infamy a quarter century later for how bad it was on football's biggest stage. How are you possibly going to say that you didn't panic and you played smart when you had 1.4 yards per pass? Oh, and it's not like Dilfer didn't turn the ball over and played a clean game in that regard. Because Dilfer not only fumbled the ball once, but he threw an interception on the 2-yard line, getting picked up by Pat Tillman in the process on a play that was entirely his fault. Feels like a smart quarterback would have lived to see another day and would have thrown the ball away to set a possible 4th down attempt or set up a field goal to give the Ravens a 6-0 lead. A quarterback that was playing well without panicking and without being dumb wouldn't have thrown a pick down there in that spot. But maybe Dilfer played well in the 4th quarter. Maybe he led some efficient drives and whatnot and made some clutch throws when it mattered most. In the 4th quarter, Dilfer threw for negative 12 yards. You heard that number right, negative 12 yards. If you're watching this video right now, and your name is not Trent Dilfer, whether or not you were alive, congratulations. You had more passing yards in the fourth quarter of this game than Trent Dilfer had. The Ravens ran the ball on each of their final 8 plays in the game. And to find the last time that Trent Dilfer threw a pass that resulted in a gain of yards, you have to go back to the 3 minutes 54 second mark of the third quarter. In fact, and I cannot believe this is a real statement because it just does not seem possible, on Baltimore's final 9 drives of the game, Dilfer completed 5 passes. A grand total of 2 of them went for positive yardage. Over the course of the final 35 minutes of the game, Dilfer had more completions that went for negative yards than he had completions that went for positive yards, plus the turnovers and the sacks and the awful decisions he made and whatnot. Trent Dilfer wasn't playing like a man who was not panicking and was smart. He was playing like a man trying to sabotage his own team. But hang on, because this performance by Trent Dilfer, where he finished the game with a passer rating of 41.9, somehow gets even worse. Because it's not like he did anything in helping the Ravens get those 13 points in the first place. Baltimore scored 10 points in the second half to erase a 7-3 deficit at one point and win it 13-7. On both of those drives, thanks to great defense and special teams by the Ravens started the drive in positive territory. On the first of these drives, they started at the 6-yard line. On those 2 drives combined, Trent Dilfer, in giving the Ravens the lead, threw a grand total of 1 pass. That's it, 1 pass. Offensive coordinator Matt Cavanaugh basically realized that the only way that the Ravens could lose this game was if Trent Dilfer screwed up. So he tried his best to call a game that Dilfer could not screw up. And even then, Dilfer did his best to screw up. For Dilfer to say that there's something to be said for not panicking and playing smart, and to say that considering the circumstances, he played well and did what he had to do to help his team win the game, is completely asinine and downright delusional. There is no other word for it but delusional. I know football is a team sport and you win and lose as a team, but you are seriously overestimating your importance if you talk about how well you played when you finished the game with 37 net passing yards, had negative yardage in the fourth quarter, put the ball on the ground, turned it over in the red zone, and completed 2 passes for positive yards in the final 35 minutes of the game. The Ravens won this game in spite of you, not because of you. There were definitely games in 2000 where Dilfer played well and looked the part. I'll admit, there were some games where he was part of the reason why they won. Maybe not the biggest reason because their defense was that good, but he was definitely not a net negative. That 3-touchdown, no interception game in Week 10 against the Cincinnati Bengals, that game against the Dallas Cowboys where he threw 2 touchdowns and completed 75% of his passes while posting a passer rating just a hair below 100, that 24-23 win against the Tennessee Titans where he threw 2 touchdowns and threw the game winner with 25 seconds left to Patrick Johnson? Absolutely. I'll give you that. This freaking game against the Arizona Cardinals, you are out of your mind. Trent Dilfer, you are out of your ever-loving mind. So as a word to any quarterbacks out there, or really any people working in an environment with a group, if you do nothing positive and actually are a hindrance that's holding your team back, and you say that you did a good job, didn't panic, and were smart the entire time, people are going to look at you like you're a crazy person that descended down from Mars. This man right here, having those delusions of grandeur and making those comments after a performance of that caliber, is almost laughable. As is the fact that the man somehow won a Super Bowl despite only completing over 50% of his passes in one of his team's final 5 games. There was one big reason why the 2000 Ravens won it all, and there was one big reason why the 2000 Ravens would have gone down as the greatest defense of all time to not win it all if they fell short of the Lombardi. And I think you can guess which category Trent freaking Dilfer belonged to. Spoiler alert, it's not the first one. Because on this December day in Tempe, Arizona in the year 2000, Trent Dilfer was having delusions in the desert. Check out our live streaming schedule for the next few days. We're live every single day on this channel, whether we're covering a sporting event or playing GeoGuessr or just taking your requests. So make sure you like and subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss a single time that we go live and so that you can join this community. Also, thanks to all our members and our Patreon supporters who get exclusive perks like their name at the end of each video, members-only Q&A streams, and cool emojis to use on videos and during streams. See how you can join this community and become a member or a Patreon member by clicking the link in the description below.